Hi Algebra 1 students. Tomorrow on Canvas you're going to have a quiz to take over quadratics, and so the notes page that is 8 questions that you saw when you were in Canvas right above this video is going to be our review. So we're going to review how to solve quadratics with the quadratic formula, and up top in the little box it says quadratic formula. So let's write this down one more time because you can use this notes page on your quiz tomorrow. It would be extra helpful. So we're going to write down x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. That's the quadratic formula. And then I just want to remind you that quadratics come in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, and we need them to equal 0 so that we can use this formula. And the a, b, and c come from this green version of the formula that we plug in to the blue quadratic formula. So I'm going to do the odd problems, and then you guys can use the even ones for your own practice. So we're going to start with number 1. On 1 through 4, it says we just have to identify a, b, and c. So let's start with number 1. Number 1 says that we have 2x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0. So from the previous page, it had ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So the a is in front of the x squared, the b is in front of the x, and the c is the one that has no x on it. So for number 1, the answer is a equals 2, b equals 5, and c equals 4. Okay, let's look at number 3. Okay, so for number 3, it says negative 2x squared plus 4 equals negative 2x. Be super careful. We need this to equal 0. So I'm going to draw my line, and to undo a negative, you have to do a positive. So I'm going to add a 2x and add a 2x. So now I'm going to have a negative 2x squared. I'm going to write the x term next because we write them in order. So x squareds, then plus my 2x's, and then plus 4 equals 0. I'm going to use my highlighter real quick. None of these variable terms are the same, and this has no variables, so I can't combine any like terms. So, again, for my first page, it's ax squared plus bx plus c, and now that it equals 0, we can just match these up. My a is going to go with my x squared, my b is with my x, and my c is at the end. So a is going to equal negative 2, b equals a positive 2, and c equals 4. And so now you can try number 4. Be careful on number 4. You have to make it equal 0. Okay, let's go down to the bottom, and we're going to do number 5. Number 5 says x squared minus 8x minus 20 equals 0. And this time we're actually going to solve. We're going to use that quadratic formula. I'm going to put it down here in the corner so we can remember it. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So there's a little magic 1 hiding here. And it equals 0, so we're good. And so I can write down ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And then my letters and numbers, they line up. So my a is going to equal 1. My b equals a negative 8. See this negative sign? Let me grab the highlighter real quick. See this negative sign right here? We got to take that with us. And then c is going to equal negative 20. And so now I'm going to take all of these things and plug them into my quadratic formula. So x equals the opposite of b. So b was a negative 8. A negative negative 8, or the opposite of negative 8, makes a positive 8. Plus or minus the square root of b, which was negative 8 squared, minus 4. A is 1. C is negative 20. All divided by 2 times 1. I'm going to go inside here like we've done it every time. This discriminant thing, I'm going to do it first. So negative 8 squared, a negative times a negative is a positive. So I'm going to get 64 minus 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times negative 20 is a negative 80. So you're really going to add those two together. So you're going to get a positive 144. So then I'm going to plug that back into my quadratic formula. I'm going to have x equals 8 plus or minus the square root of 144, all divided by 2. Make everything smaller really quick so we have some more room to work. So this piece right here has two versions, a plus version and a minus version. So I'm going to have x equals 8 plus the square root of 144 all over 2. And you have x equals 8 minus the square root of 144 all over 2. Both of which you can put in your calculator. I'm going to use my brain power. We can do this. The square root of 144 is 12, so both of these become a 12. So 8 plus 12 is 20. So I have 20 over 2, which is the same thing as 10. So there's one of my answers. And then 8 minus 12 is going to be a negative 4 over 2. And so x is going to equal negative 2. So there is your two solutions. One more problem, kiddos. We got this. So number 7. 4x squared plus 9 equals 12x. So the first thing I hope you notice is this thing right here. It has to equal 0, but it doesn't. So I'm going to draw my line. It's a positive 12x, so I'm going to minus 12x minus 12x. This x term right here is not a like term with either one of those, so we can't combine like terms. So I'm going to have a 4x squared. Next comes my x's, so minus my 12x plus 9. And now this equals 0. Much better. So I'm going to write down ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We're good with those zeros. And then we can match things up. Don't forget to take this negative. So my a equals 4. My b is going to equal a negative 12. And my c is going to equal a 9. And so now I can use this and plug it into my quadratic formula. Let me write that down again for us. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So I'm going to have for this problem x equals, b is negative 12, so a negative negative, or the opposite of negative 12 is going to be a 12 plus or minus the square root negative 12 squared minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is 9, all divided by 2 times 4. I'm going to take this piece right here. I'm going to do my discriminant. So a negative 12 times a negative 12, we can use a calculator, but I'm going to use my brain power. 144 minus 4 times 4 is 16 times my 9. I'm going to use a calculator for that. So we have 4 times 4, which is 16, times a 9. So minus 144. 16 times 9 is 144. 144 minus 144 is 0. I'm only going to have one answer this time because the square root of 0 is 0. So I'm going to have x equals 12 plus or minus the square root of 0 all over 2 times 4 is 8. So instead of having two versions of this, I'm only going to have one. Because 12 plus or minus 0 doesn't matter. 12 plus 0 is 0, and 12 minus 0... Sorry, 12 plus 0 is 12, and 12 minus 0 is still 12. So what I really have is 12 over 8, and this reduces to 3 over 2, or the same thing as 1.5. You could have typed this whole thing in your calculator right here, and it will still get you to this answer. So now we've solved by quadratic, we've found A, B, and C, and you can go back and do problems 2, 4, 6, and 8. And just for funsies that you watch this whole video, at the bottom of your worksheet before you take a picture of it and submit it, you're going to write down one thing that you're sure you can do really well for this quiz and one thing that you have a question or two about so that maybe your teacher could message you back in Canvas and help you before you take this quiz. Happy math, kiddos!